Okay, that's 2 phones. 2 people are going to be buying cream cakes. I'm serious. I didn't get this waistline without people letting their phones ring. If you could put them on stun, it just helps. Okay, next up we have Iain McLeod. He's the technical manager. This is scary of the Energy Savings Trust. I'm sure it's not scary, really.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much in that title. Okay, so first of all, I do feel that my slides have a bit less pizzazz than some of the other ones we've seen today, so apologies for that. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Energy Saving Trust and the work that we've been doing over the years to support getting towards net zero. Energy Saving Trust is a trusted and respected voice on energy efficiency and clean energy solutions, and we're working towards a smart, decarbonized, decentralized energy system. And the work that we kind of delivered as part of our portfolio across the organization touches across the whole range of kind of sustainability. We've done things towards supporting community renewables, tackling fuel poverty, installing heat pumps. We even have an international team now, which is supporting energy efficiency projects from less well-off parts of the world. Me, since I've been with Energy Saving Trust, going back over 10 years, I've been with the transport team throughout that, and it's been a really great position to be in because I've got to see like just how much has happened, the sort of explosion of activity since that time, which I've tried to illustrate here. I've realized this is a very cheap shot at the Renault Twizy, which was never really at the vanguard of electric vehicle technology. I'm just trying to visually convey how far we have come, which I think is true. But yeah, apologies if anyone came here in a Twizy or as a Twizy advocate. But yeah, so when I started, I remember my excitement, like 6 months into the role, the first time I saw an electric vehicle in the wild, which is like as opposed to, being driven by a member of the public around Edinburgh, as opposed to like an expo like this. Whereas now they're everywhere. And I just walked here today across Holyrood Park, and I think I saw several of them just there. And probably a lot of them were people coming here, but most of them probably weren't. And you can, of course, spot them by the little green tags and the number plates, which they didn't used to have when I started. But it was still pretty easy to spot them because there were literally like 7 models. And 3 of them were the same model with just a different badge. So like, if you knew those 7 models, you were like, expert. That was all it took. Whereas now I've long since lost count of the number of models that are out there. So it really feels like we've been moving through a transformative moment. And Energy Saving Trust has been there from the outset, delivering our support in our twin pillars of advice and funding, all of which is funded by the Scottish Government. It's Transport Arm, Transport Scotland. Our advice is to consumers, businesses, public sector bodies, and the funding is kind of across the whole range of the sort of road transport. We support active travel, we support zero-emission buses, bus retrofitting. The bulk of it has been focused on sort of electric cars and the LCVs in the form of our loans and support for grant infrastructure. We were heavily involved in the early stage of development of the public charging network in Scotland, with the Scottish Government provided funding to build up that public network. And it's thanks to that, even now as we pull back from that and the private sector is much more involved, but Scotland still leads the rest of the UK in charge points per head of population. That's some of the work we have done. So in terms of things we've done more recently in the last sort of year, so one program I'm involved with is we've got 2 standalone websites separate from our main website. One of them is our EV infrastructure guide, or EVIG, which is for people who are looking at developing public charging infrastructure. The other is our fleet decarb toolkit, which is for fleet managers, those organizing fleets who are looking to electrify and decarbonize in line with Scottish Government targets and moving towards net zero. Within EVIG, we've recently launched a case study map where we are showcasing exemplar charging infrastructure projects from across Scotland, looking at things like projects that stand out in some way for ambition or innovation by including features like smart technologies, solar canopies, integrated battery storage, or advanced accessibility solutions, and looking for ones that are kind of doing that at scale. We're continuing to develop this map. We've got 9 case studies so far, spread over 25 sites across mainland Scotland and the Western Isles. But if you know of a project that you think deserves a place on our map, please do get in touch, because we want to hear about it. Other programs which aren't my programs, so I've got some cards here. Just hopefully I can do this without them, but there's some numbers. But our contactless compliance grant program, over 3 months, we delivered £1.6 million of funding to ensure 111 charge points, still kept apace with new UK government guidelines on public charge point regulations. Our plugged-in communities program, we designed this with the just transition in mind, making sure that as we move towards net zero, no one's getting left behind. Over 5 years, we've delivered, check, £4.3 million for 61 electric vehicles, community transport vehicles, to ensure that these community groups can continue to deliver their vital community services, but they're able to do so in a zero-emission fashion. The Scott Zeb Phase 2, which Fiona mentioned in the introduction, so we've provided £41.7 million of funding to eight bus and coach organisations, consortium of 8 bus and coach organisations, to support them as they continue their investment in zero-emission buses, help them to continue that transition to zero emissions and make sure that that becomes self-sustaining. We've provided over 5 years, £7.6 million to low-income consumers to help them to get rid of their vehicles which aren't compliant with low-emission zones, to help them to move towards community shared transport and active travel. We've provided a further £2.9 million towards micro-businesses to the same end, getting rid of their vehicles, moving towards active travel. And we've provided £4.4 million towards micro-businesses operating in low-emission zones to ensure that they can support them to retrofit their vehicles with alternative fuel solutions or with emission abatement technology, so they can get to their Euro standard to a level that is compliant with LEZs. We continue to provide charge point grants. We support over 20,000 home charge point installations since 2013, over 400 last year, including a number for communal charge points for community groups and factored developments. And as we move away from the Charge Place Scotland network, we're continuing to provide provide support for hosts on the current network as they transition to a private sector run network. So we're giving them information through webinars and information on our website. So just for the last little bit, I just want to reflect a little bit on some of the challenges that we've kind of faced over the years. Some of these have there have been inroads made in some of them. Some have kind of still there, and some of them have kind of emerged as new ones. So one of the obvious ones is the cost of the vehicles. That has really come down a lot from where it was 10 years ago, and it's continuing to come down. We're not quite at parity with ICE vehicles, petrol and diesel, but we're getting close. And it's been cheaper to run an electric vehicle than the petrol ICE vehicle pretty much since the modern electric vehicles emerged about 15 years ago, particularly if you can home charge. Public charging remains more expensive for a number of reasons than home charging, and it's also much less convenient. And to me, I feel like this remains probably like the single biggest obstacle as we try to advocate that move away, or move rather towards electric vehicles. It's like, really, how are we going to solve this? There's a lot of solutions out there, with whether one of those is the one that really cracks the problem, we'll see, but that remains a big challenge. There's obviously a lot more vehicles that are like models available. So if whatever your needs are nowadays, which wasn't the case before, there's probably an electric vehicle that can meet them. The driving range, as Pete said, like that has really come along. When I started, it was probably most vehicles were struggling to do 90 miles in a charge, whereas now they're comfortably doing 200 miles irrespective of the conditions. And the pace of charging has absolutely rocketed. I mean, some of you may have seen the news recently, BYD, the Chinese vehicle manufacturer, who are boasting they've achieved megawatt scale charging with their vehicles. At that rate, you're getting about 300 miles of range within about 5 minutes. So that's pretty much parity with petrol and diesel vehicles. So if that could become the standard, then what reason would there be not to switch over to electric? Well, unfortunately, there does seem to have been some public hardening against these vehicles. We did a piece of work recently which involved publishing a public survey to get some attitudes about booking system technology and public charging infrastructure. And North Lanarkshire Council were good enough to post it on their Facebook page, and we got some good stuff there. But you hear the word Facebook, you're probably right there, like, oh, this isn't going to end well. Sure enough, just looking at the screed of hostility that just the words electric vehicle triggered in people. I mean, people weren't even engaging. I don't think they had any concept of like what booking systems were for these things. It was just dozens and dozens and dozens, almost unanimously against this technology. And that wasn't there when I started. People, if you spoke to them about electric vehicles, they were interested. They probably didn't really have an opinion on it, but they wanted to hear about it. Whereas now there really has been that mounting negativity, which really does have to be reckoned with. And sort of going into the comments of our survey and seeing the reasons for this, it's generally pretty baseless. It's like things that aren't true or out of date or have become just completely distorted. So yeah, we need to recognize that we're in a kind of age of chronic misinformation and how we get through that. So I think our role is really important in that, we're seen as trusted and impartial. We can be really effective advocates for this. So we're passionate about that message, passionate about the work that we're doing, really excited that in 25 to 26, we have an exciting whole array of Scottish Government programs that we're going to be delivering, continuing to deliver that message. And yeah, really excited about it, but realize it may not be reaching everyone. So if there's any work that you think that we can maybe help you deliver, then please do reach out to us. We're upstairs as well along with the others. So thank you.